I'm not sure I'm the most qualified person to give this intro, to tell you the truth. The only hallucination I've ever had is when I accidentally ate too much cheese before bed that one time. Oh god, never again. The grommet nightmares, I don't need those. But still, as horrifying as hallucinations are in real life, developers seem to flippin' love them as they turn up in video games all the time. Whether they're used to show that a character is on drugs, suffering from a trauma, or has been scared so much that their brain has stopped working, hallucinations are a pillar of video game storytelling, and we're here today to highlight some of the best. 2 warnings before we get started. Firstly, some of the subject matter on this list gets a little bit dark, so just be prepared for that. And secondly, there is a big spoiler warning for almost all of the games on this list. Some of them were just unavoidable, and for that, we apologise. With that out of the way, let's dive into a world where nothing is quite as it seems, and even your own mind can't be trusted. Ooh, spooky. Halloween's long gone. We should have done this a month ago, shouldn't we? I'm Peter from TripleJump, or at least that's what you think. And here are 10 video games that made you hallucinate. Number 10, Far Cry 3. Far Cry 3 is best known for 2 things: the ending where you get stabbed whilst doing the nasty, and for having one of the greatest villains in video game history. Vas Montenegro is an unhinged mercenary aligned with the game's big baddie, Hoyt Volker. Vas is a man who gives into his most twisted desires without thought. He's violent, unstable, and highly dangerous, so naturally, fans loved him. One of the big criticisms levelled at Vas's character is that he dies far too early on. This happens when the player character, Jason Brody, confronts Vas at his secret base whilst under the effects of psychoactive drugs. Jason then enters a dreamlike state and has to fight off various hallucinations of Vas before finally finding the real one and skewering him with the dragon knife. Far Cry 3 is a game littered with hallucinations, including one in the game's dramatic ending, but out of all of them, we think that this scene is the best one due to its excellent visuals and the superb work of voice actor Michael Mando. If only it didn't come at the expense of our beloved Vas. Rest easy, you beautiful lunatic. Number 9, Batman Arkham Asylum. If there's one guy who knows a thing or two about hallucinations, it's Batman villain Scarecrow. One of the many foes in Rocksteady's excellent Batman Arkham Asylum, Scarecrow's special power is not protecting crops from carrion birds, but rather scaring the absolute bejesus out of people with his special fear toxin. The toxin is a gas that induces uncontrollable terror in its victims. Batman himself feels its effects multiple times throughout the game, as if Bruce Wayne wasn't psychologically damaged enough already, you know, what with the whole witnessing his parents get murdered in an alleyway as a child thing. Players get to join Brucey through all of his hallucinations. One where he believes Commissioner Gordon has been murdered, one in which he fights a giant version of Scarecrow, and one where he swaps places with the Joker and is incarcerated in Arkham. Fun for all the family! Not only does the fear toxin affect Batman's perception of reality, but it also messes with the player too, as at one point it appears that the game has crashed. Scarecrow's transition from page to game is executed flawlessly in Arkham Asylum, and the fear toxin gives players a harrowing glimpse at the madness within the character. Number 8, Heavy Rain. Uh-oh, we're talking about a Quantic Dream game, which means we're in danger of summoning the spirit of David Cage. Quick, someone burn some sage and draw a salt circle. We don't want to let him in the house or he'll start making everything all weird again. Heavy Rain puts players into the shoes of Ethan Mars, a man who really needs to keep a closer eye on his children, as one of them gets hit by a car and the other gets kidnapped by a serial killer. As a result of the car accident, Ethan suffers from agoraphobia. This rears its head in one scene in a train station where Ethan has a panic attack in a large crowd, leading to him hallucinating that everyone around him has frozen solid. And yes, before you ask, this is one of the scenes where Ethan yells Jason a bunch of times. Love it. Players can interact with the frozen crowd members, touching them so that they crumple over like one of those puppets you push up from the bottom, whatever they're called, I don't know. In fact, if you knock down 50 of these people on the PlayStation version of Heavy Rain, you can earn yourself a nice shiny trophy. Isn't that neat? I don't know if it is. It's a bit weird. I don't like it. Number 7. Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. It should come as no surprise that Hideo Kojima, a man whose entire brain is just one big fever dream, decided to put a hallucination into one of his games. Sadly, Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater is not a game about tucking into a tasty python, and is instead a prequel to the first game in the MGS series, following a Cold War rescue mission led by Agent Naked Snake. You really don't make it easy for us, do you, Hideo? One of the trippiest parts of the game comes when Naked Snake encounters the Sorrow, the spirit of a murdered psychic soldier. The Sorrow uses his powers to send Naked Snake to some sort of spiritual plane where he's confronted by a river of souls. The souls in question are those of all the people Snake has killed throughout the game. The Sorrow then forces the protagonist to wade through the river and face his past. The only time this falls down is if you don't actually kill anyone during the game. Yes, it is possible to get to this point and just wade through an empty river, which is rather embarrassing for the Sorrow. You better go kill some people, just to make him feel better. Number 6. Call of Duty Black Ops. Like Metal Gear Solid 3, the 9th game in the COD series, Black Ops, also takes place during the Cold War, but focuses on Alex Mason, a Marine captain, CIA operative, and all-American chap. The game opens with Mason seemingly being interrogated by those pesky Russians about the location of a secret broadcast station. We find out through a series of flashbacks that Mason had been working with a Russian turncoat called Reznov, who he met whilst escaping from the Gulag. But it's not the Soviet forces he tells this to, but rather his American comrades, who are the ones interrogating him the entire time? What? It turns out that while he was being held, Mason had been drugged by his captors with a reverse-engineered form of MK Ultra, a hallucinogenic drug developed by the CIA. The full effects of the drug are revealed when he finds out that Reznov actually died during the prison break, and he'd been imagining him ever since. It's a great twist and one that really elevates the plot of the game, but it's now made me question whether Ben, Ashton and James are actually real. Maybe I should go poke them in the face just to find out. Number 5. Max Payne. 2001's third-person shooter Max Payne is a game all about a grizzled cop taking down a new narcotic, so it's not surprising that the game features a huge hallucination scene. DEA agent Max Payne is working to shut down the trafficking of designer drug Valkyria, whilst also hunting for those who murdered his family 3 years ago. The titular Mr. Payne is thrust into a world of seedy mobsters and contract killers, one of whom drugs Max with Valkyria, inducing a horrible nightmare. The Valkyria he accidentally ingests sends Payne back to the night of his family's murder, only this time with added spooky colours. Players have to navigate a hellish version of Max's home, completing platforming levels that are difficult at best and rage-inducing at worst. If that wasn't bad enough, even if players do complete this level, they still can't save Max's wife and child. Instead, Max just gets to relive the trauma all over again. Yay. Max Payne is a brilliant game, and the genre-bending drug sequences are part of why it's so beloved. Even if the real Max Payne is actually felt by the player when trying to complete those platform levels. Why is the line so thin? Number 4. Lollipop Chainsaw. A hit in Japan, but less popular in the West, Lollipop Chainsaw is a hack-and-slash adventure that follows the escapades of Juliet Starling, a zombie-hunting high school cheerleader. Juliet must defeat 5 super zombies called the Dark Purveyors, which sounds like that heavy metal band that your weird cousin plays bass in. No, I will not buy your CD, Jonathan, just leave me alone. Each of the Dark Purveyors is based on a different genre of rock music. One of the purveyors, Mariska, takes inspiration from psychedelic rock, and you can tell this because her level is covered in strange-looking mushrooms. If you slice through one of these mushrooms with your chainsaw, you enter a hallucination where you're surrounded by chickens, for some reason. Then a giant egg appears and hatches into a massive zombie chicken, which you then have to fight. Somehow, I think there were more than just shiitake mushrooms in the development studio when this game was being made. Lollipop Chainsaw is a really fun game that's getting a remake in 2023, so now is the perfect time to play the original. Just be wary next time you make yourself scrambled eggs though. You never know what might pop out. Number 3. Silent Hill. When it comes to survival horror, you can't get better than the original Silent Hill for the PlayStation. Unless you prefer Resident Evil, but that's fine. Psychologically speaking though, this game very much comes out on top. A misty masterpiece that gave the world one of the most popular horror franchises in gaming, as well as a bunch of books, soundtrack albums, and rubbish films. The original game wastes no time at all in getting inside your head. It opens with protagonist Harry Mason, who weirdly is the second character on this list with the surname Mason, walking down a demonic alleyway. But this isn't a normal demonic alleyway. Actually, I don't know what a normal demonic alleyway looks like, so we'll just have to assume this is one. Anyway, I digress. Harry is confronted by various horrors as he walks. Bloodstains, mutilated corpses, and finally, 2 horrifying creatures that attack and kill him. Obviously, they don't actually kill him, that would have been a bit of an anticlimactic end to the game. No, instead, Hazza wakes up in the local diner to find that, fortunately, his harrowing experience was all just a dream. Although, knowing what our hero is about to face, maybe it was more of a premonition. Whether premonitions count as hallucinations is perhaps debatable, but for the sake of this list, we will say that yes, they do. Number 2. Spec Ops: The Line. 2012's excellently subversive shooter, Spec Ops: The Line, is played through the eyes of a US military captain, Martin Walker, as he attempts to bring down a rogue battalion of American soldiers led by his former commanding officer and hero, John Conrad. Walker and Conrad communicate via radio throughout the game, with Conrad claiming responsibility for various atrocities that Walker has witnessed, including the killing of 47 civilians with white phosphorus. However, when Walker finally comes face to face with Conrad, he discovers, in true Sixth Sense fashion, spoilers, that Conrad has actually been dead the whole time, and the conversations the two were having were taking place entirely within Walker's head. Walker then realizes it was actually he who was responsible for all the death and destruction, leading to one final confrontation with Conrad about how Walker should deal with his guilt. A harrowing look at the effects of war on the human psyche, Spec Ops: The Line is not only one of the slickest uses of hallucinations on this list, but perhaps the most powerful. Our writers quite like to end each entry with a joke, but it's quite difficult to do one about this game. I think it's best if we just move on to the top spot, okay? And number 1, We Happy Few. Set on the island of Wellington Wells, We Happy Few deals with an alternate timeline where the US did not join World War II, leaving Britain to fend for itself. As a result, the island's population committed what is known only as the very bad thing in order to drive away the German occupying forces. The guilt from the very bad thing necessitates the invention of joy, a hallucinogenic drug that blocks all the bad memories from people's minds and forces them to be permanently happy, just like we all are here at TripleJump Towers. The game has 3 main characters, each resistant to the effects of joy in one way or another. Over the course of the game, they all learn more and more about the real world of Wellington Wells and the nature of the very bad thing. We Happy Few establishes an entire world that is one big hallucination, flipping the convention brilliantly on its head. If anything, players actually play through an anti-hallucination and must convince the rest of the population that it's they who've been fooled. Can we stop talking about hallucinations now? My head's starting to hurt. I think it's time I took my joy. Thank you, Cultaholic.